It seems like every time we make a tool, we also discuss the process of hardening and tempering, or heat treatment. And there's always a lot of questions following that about why I did it this way versus some other way. Why do I anneal instead of normalize? How do you know what to quench it in? How do you know how much carbon there is? And that usually is applying more so to found steels than it is to new steels. New steels, you can look all that up. You buy O1, you go to a chart, you look up O1, it tells you all of that stuff. And we're going to discuss some of that in the next few videos. But I think it's time that we do a series, and it may take a little while, of heat treatment videos. And that's going to be probably fairly involved, and it's probably going to get over my head, which means I have to do my homework, I have to study before I can do all of this. But I'm going to start with some simple theories. I am not a metallurgist. I'm not an expert on heat treating. I take the time to study and understand what I need to know for what I'm doing. What I'm doing may not be what you're doing, and therefore you need to study and research and take the time to understand what you need to know to do your kind of work. So it's one of those things you got to put your homework in, and these videos won't be a substitute for that. Now, where do you do your homework? Well, one of the best places to start is Heat Treatment, Selection, and Application of Tool Steels by Bryson. This is a book you should have in your shop if you're doing anything more than 1 or 2 steels with a heat treating. This has the information in it, and this will be the main source that I will do research in as we do more of these videos. And I have some other sources, and I'll talk about those as we get there. Pardon the noise today. It has been incredibly windy and has caused a bunch of problems. It's dusty and nasty out. There's a bunch of fires north of here. So if you're hearing a lot of roaring in the background, that's the wind, and I apologize, but I don't know how to filter that out. Mother Nature's got more control than I do. But I thought I would start fairly simple, and we would discuss just some general concepts on trying to decide what it is you've got. Is it worth hardening and tempering? Is it worth heat treating? Is it going to make a good tool? And some of that will involve testing, and the first thing we're going to do is spark testing. And we're going to take it to a piece of unknown material, to a grinder, and we are going to compare it to some known materials. And when I say known materials, I mean something I bought new, and I know that I bought O1, 5160, W1, S7, 1045, 1095, whatever it is that I've got, that I know what that is. And to do that, I have a series of little bars, and these are just roughly the same size bar of known steels. And I've got, and wrought iron, because I've got wrought iron and mild steel and 5160, W1, H13, S7, and O1. And I'm going to make some more of these to do the 1045s, 1075, 1085, that kind of stuff. And any other steel that I have, that I know what it is, I'll make up a bar, I'll mark it, I'll keep it on hand, and use that for spark testing. Now, that's not the same as comparing to an old file, because you may not know what an old file is. Don't assume that a piece of leaf spring is 5160 and use that as your control. Buy new 5160 and use that as your control to check the leaf spring to see if it sparks the same. Now, spark testing is not perfect. It's not 100%. It's subjective. You have to say, do these sparks look like those sparks? And different steels can look very similar, and some can look radically different. Sometimes even steels with similar properties may look radically different. So that's something you have to consider when you're doing this, but it'll give you some idea of carbon content, high, medium, low, or has it got a lot of alloy stuff in it? And there's something you can do here to benefit yourself. So we're going to go out to the grinder, and I'm just going to use my belt grinder. You can use a hard wheel grinder, you can use an angle grinder. Any of those things work. I'm going to use the belt grinder because it's set up, it's convenient, and it's available right now. So let's head out to the grinding area. I have a few pieces of steel that I don't know what they are, and I'm going to compare them to some known things. But first I'm going to go through my known stuff just so you can see how the spark patterns differ. The first one I'm going to start with will be the wrought iron. It should be the lowest carbon and have the least dramatic spark pattern in it. Then let's look at mild steel. You can see a much more dramatic spark pattern from the mild steel. Now let's do a piece of W1, if I can find the W1. W1 is a fairly simple carbon steel, or simple steel. I guess it's not really a carbon steel since it's a W steel, but it's a fairly high carbon steel, so that's why it has such a elaborate spark pattern, or such a bright spark pattern. So let's do O1 next. Now there's a little bit of a range of carbon in different steels, but O1 and W1 are very similar, but you notice those two had completely different spark patterns. That's because O1 has some other alloys in with it that the W1 does not have. Our next bar is 5160. Now the 5160 has an extremely bright, dramatic spark pattern similar to the W1, but it has less carbon in it, so it's not always a perfect comparison. Just kind of gives you an idea. Next thing, let's do S7. So again, the S7 looks somewhat different. It has a completely different complexity of spark. That's because of all the alloys in it. And our final piece that I've got a sample of here, oh no, I've got two more. I've got a 4140 and an H13. Let's do the H13. And again, that's not the most dramatic spark pattern in the world. And we're finally going to test some 4140. 4140 again isn't very dramatic, but it's some pretty tough stuff. So the testing for just high carbon doesn't really work because the different alloys they put in there, the different elements, really affect it. Next, let's test the drift we made the other day that was an unknown steel and see what it looks like. So that was a back and forth test with the drift and then 4140 and 5160, and it really doesn't match any of those, and it certainly didn't match the W1, the O1, the S7, the H13, so it's something completely different. So we're kind of guessing when we work with it, but it definitely is some sort of an alloy steel, just judging from the sparks. We can kind of figure that out. Let's test something else here, and this is just to look at. I'm not going to do comparison. This is a lift rake tine for our hay rake tine, and this one's been cut into so it's straightened. So what does that tell us? That tells us that's a fairly simple steel with a lot of carbon in it. So it's something in the lines of a 1085, 1095 probably, but but since I don't have a known piece of that to test, we can't really compare it exactly, but we get a pretty good idea that it's high carbon. The next thing, let's just look at a file. So that file was the most dramatic, brightest, most 4th of July-like sparks we've had yet. So that's very high carbon content, which is what you would expect from a file. And our last piece we're going to test is a relative unknown. I got no idea what this material is. It is a piece of a bolt from a giant cable spool, one of those great big 4 or 5 foot diameter wooden spools. TV cable comes on. And somebody said, it's really tough stuff. Don't know what that means. So we're going to find out today what that means, or we're going to at least spark test it and take a look at it. Well, that's a look at what spark testing is and how you might apply it. Now, none of the things that we looked at, the unknowns, the drift, whatever that was made out of sucker rod, this bolt, the file, the hay rake tine, none of those were exact matches. Although the hay rake tine probably comes closer to the W1 than anything else, so it's a very similar type of steel. Probably 1085 or 1095. But that just gives you an idea of how you might use spark testing to sort of narrow down what you're working with. I still think this stuff might have some application other than just being used like mild steel. The spark pattern was certainly not that of mild steel. It was probably somewhere in between the 01 and the 4140, but not really, and it's kind of odd. So it's not a science by any means. It's an art. It's a subjective guess, if nothing else, but it is just one tool in your toolbox that might help you decide what you've got when you're looking at salvaged and used steels. So put together a little set of things that you know what they are, not I know this was a leaf spring, because different leaf springs are going to be different, and if you had a set of 4 different leaf springs, you might get 4 different spark patterns. You need to have a known thing that you compare the leaf spring to if that's what you're doing. So as you buy new tool steels, or know people that have little scraps of new tool steels, mark them so you can read them, either with a paint marker, or I've stamped them in with letter stamps so they'll last until I grind through all my letters. And save them in a box somewhere where you can find them, and every time you need to do this, you go to your samples and you can spark test them. And you can try and compare, what is this, and figure it out. Maybe you'll get an almost perfect match, maybe you won't. But there's another thing we can do to try to find out and narrow it down. 1, is this even hardenable? And 2, how does it harden? And that's what we'll cover in the next video. I'm going to try and keep these videos on heat treatment, on hardening and tempering in shorter sections, and some of them will be incredibly boring, and we'll talk about things like face-centered cubits and body-centered cubits and ferrites and perlite and austenization and martinization and a bunch of terms that I'm going to have to look up to get perfect definitions, because while I understand it well enough that I can deal with it, I don't want to confuse anybody else, and that's awfully easy to do. So for now, we're going to call it quits on this one today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it answered some questions. I hope it explained what spark testing is and how you can use it. But quit worrying about it for now. Get out to your shop, make something, stay safe, wear your safety glasses, and we'll see you for the next one.